Hello, welcome to Empowerment TV and the Empowerment Podcast. We have another incredible guest today. She is a creative force and a businesswoman and someone who's truly an incredible example of following your passion and letting it see where it takes you. Her name is Joanne Pearce. She's the owner of Mock-Ups Mocktails and also a company named Spilt. You'll hear more about those companies, those businesses, and she's entertaining, she's fun. It's a really cool conversation that we have, and it's goes in many directions, but please enjoy and please welcome Joanne Pearce.
Hello.
Oh, how are you?
Good. Thank you. I'm so sorry. It's running late. My sense of how long it takes me to do things can get a little
A little warped sometimes.
I took a shower like 20 minutes ago and I was like, I have time. And I was like, I don't got time.
No, it's all good. It's perfect because inevitably when I'm doing an interview, it has snowed the night before and the snowblower goes through because I have someone who does my snow. And literally like 10 minutes before we're supposed to start, he's like coming through my so, you know, like,
Oh,
so it was perfect timing because that's all done. He's gone. There's no noise.
it's great.
It's great. It's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. I'm so excited to have another conversation with you because certainly we can go on many tangents, and that is perfectly fine. And yeah,
I feel like we could talk in every direction for a long time.
yes, we will take what comes. What I want to start with, I want to read something from your website, and I have a couple things. I have read this, love it. The book is called Dry Spell. And I was reading it while I was waiting for an appointment, and I was literally laughing out loud. So we might pull a couple things from there too. But yeah, I want to start with reading something from your website. So the premise of your business is mocktails, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And one of the things I want to highlight is that you can really make a business out of whatever you want, and like what is interesting to you, and what kind of draws you in. So I want to just read this out because there's a couple things within this that are, I'm going to do in quotations, serious. And there's, of course, some fun things to talk about why you would go to mocktails. So this is from your website. Reasons to make a mocktail. You're taking the night, week, or month off. You're on antibiotics, which is extremely true, actually. That's my comment. You're pregnant. You're allergic to alcohol. You're doing a fitness challenge. You don't like how alcohol tastes. You have sober guests coming over. Your tap water tastes like chlorine and pennies. You have a big drug test to pass, and you can't find clean urine on the black market. Your dog has been giving you really judgy looks lately. Now, that is very possible. You're worried about getting kidney stones. And most importantly, you're a total badass. So tell me, like, I just love that, right? It's like the reality is true. Like, if you're on antibiotics, you shouldn't be having alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you're pregnant, you shouldn't be having alcohol. Like, there's a lot of reasons to do a mocktail instead.
Yeah. And most of the reasons are like deeply personal. So
Yeah.
it's just like, like there are questions that you wouldn't normally ask somebody upon first meeting them. Like, hey, are you pregnant? What medication are you on? What's your religion? Do you have an addiction issue? Like, you wouldn't ask people those questions, but people have no problem being like, oh, why aren't you drinking?
Yeah.
And chances are the answer will be one of those things. So, I mean, I think that's changing. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. But also, like, I think we can kind of come away now from this narrative of like the rock bottom Like the only reason anybody would want to stop drinking alcohol is because they woke up in a bathtub after crashing their sister's wedding. You
Mm.
know, like there's you can just stop because you want to, and you can just
Yes.
because it makes you feel bad. Like that's
Yes.
enough. We don't
Yeah.
have to have a reason to stop other than that.
Exactly. And what prompted you to stop and then take that into this passion of creating and building a business around mocktails?
Yeah, it was like I stopped just very on a whim. Like I'd always sort of suspected that like I probably was drinking too much and I was gonna have to deal with it at some point.
Mhm.
But it didn't come to a big dramatic point. It was just like I think I Googled, you know, as we all do, like, am I drinking too much? And then some like very clever like stalking ads started to show up in my, you know, like, hey, are you thinking about taking a drink from alcohol? Try this challenge. Um,
Right.
and I think that that's like can be like start to get into like morally interesting territory, sort of trying to make money off of people with addiction issues. But at the same time, like those ads, I owe a great debt of gratitude to because I was like, I am thinking about taking a break. So
Yes.
yeah, I was like actually on a trip to Australia with a friend, and the whole reason we'd gone down there was for her mom's 60th birthday party. And I that day I'd seen these ads and I was like, no, I'm doing it. I'm quitting today. And everybody was just like, why today? Um, so I tried doing a challenge, and honestly, I didn't see it all the way through. And then
Mm.
I tried doing another one, and I didn't see it all the way through. But on those challenges that I started, I noticed that I felt better and I felt less anxious and I felt more focused and I felt more grounded and creative and also maybe a little more bored. But one day was the day I just woke up and I turned to my partner and I was like, I felt it was a little hungover and I was like, I think I'm done. And that was 3.5 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you share a bit of your journey from there? Because in your book, Dry Spell, you talk a little bit about kind of the emotional aspect of making the change.
Yeah.
And I really like that you just shared that it wasn't perfect the first round, right? We're not even, and also I think just to be clear, this is not counseling. This is not necessarily about addictions. This is about making a choice. And those things, certainly seek professional help. And this can help support any changes you choose to make. So, just a little disclaimer, and on behalf of both of us, hope you don't mind I said that.
Oh yeah, of course. It says that in the book too. Like
It
this
says
is
it in the book. Yeah.
not an addiction treatment program. Like if you want it
Yes.
as a tool, that's great. It's just mainly meant to be as a tool for people who want to drink a little less.
Yeah.
I belong to like enough sort of support groups on Facebook and stuff, and you see what people struggle with. And I think that another thing, again, as sobriety becomes increasingly commodified, we have to watch out for it being like painted with a rose-colored brush. And sort of influencers being like, quit and your life will be magical. Like
Right.
it won't necessarily, it'll get better, but it might get worse. All those things you've been avoiding and sweeping under your emotional rugs, you're gonna have
Yeah.
to deal with them. Potentially that depression you've been masking, like
Yes.
the things you've been self-medicating for.
Mhm.
In my case, probably anxiety.
Right.
So yeah, you're gonna have to learn how to deal with those things yourself, and it can be a little bit of a bumpy ride, and like you can feel really angry sometimes because there's like chemical things going on when your
Mhm.
brain is like gets used to alcohol being the fast track to dopamine and reward, and you take it away and it's like, hey, what the heck?
How do
Like
I
you
get it now?
yeah, you offer it other things. You're like, yeah, do you want a bath? Do you want to go for a walk? And your brain is like, no, I don't. I don't want those things at all. I want that one thing that works really fast. Go get it for me. And when you say no, it just like throws a fit. I think it's important to talk about that stuff and not gloss over it. So it's sort of like this middle ground where I think we've seen quitting alcohol is exclusively a thing for like Alcoholics Anonymous. And now we have this new wave of quit drinking as a lifestyle choice, and you'll feel a million times better. And I think that, you know, most people's lived experience is kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And certainly, you know, we talk about dry January and some different things, like it's kind of a challenge as well. And I have some friends who have done that, and they do feel better during that time. But then there's the social aspect that comes in as well, which can be, you know, within ourselves a pressure or a sense of, you know, that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Maybe feels a little bit more peripheral, even though you're there and you know, you're in a group. It's kind of, it's very accepted, which you talk about in the book. It's kind of expected, you know, a little bit as well. I can certainly say now I get asked a lot less, why don't you drink? Or why don't you want a glass of wine? And I will periodically have an ounce. Anybody who knows me knows how to pour a glass of wine for me, which is an ounce, right?
Like a glass.
That's my glass every, you know, 3 to 6 months. But I certainly get asked less often. But I do remember that when I was like, from at least a decade, I didn't have a stitch. And at that time, it was like really strange to not drink at all. So can you kind of talk a little about that experience in making that change, just in the social circles, and how?
Absolutely. It's like, well, in the beginning, I was kind of shy about talking about this whole adventure for me. Like, I didn't tell a lot of people I'd quit drinking. I did not set out to launch a career for myself into mocktails. That was not a plan at all. It just happened to be something like I have a lot of energy. Like I said, you know, anxiety is something that I'm constantly kind of, you know, managing. And I needed something to do with my hands at happy hour. And it was nice for me to do something creative that isn't on a computer, because my background is graphic design and marketing. So making those mocktails at happy hour just gave me something to do with that nervous energy. And then I started to photograph my drinks. Like, I would take a lot of time to prepare them and put really weird stuff together. And then I would make little like dioramas on the ice. And we have a friend who has a professional flower farm, and I would, you know, use her flowers in the presentation. And then my partner let me use his camera, and I started taking pictures of them. And I started putting those online really shyly, just as a like, hey, here's my little hobby. Don't judge me. I'm not an alcoholic. It's fine. And then that's where it kind of took off. And so to answer your question is I see myself as part of an effort to help normalize not drinking, you know, to make it easier for people who aren't drinking so they won't get grilled. So now I'm obviously very outspoken about it, and, you know, like, I'm a lightning rod for people talking about how much they drink or don't drink, and that's fine too. But like, I don't mind putting myself out there for that, because I think it does help to change the conversation. And the more we can have people out there normalizing sober options and having inclusive options, and never shaming the drinkers. Like, God, there's nothing productive can come from that either. I really think that that's not a useful approach. But I do think that I can help to help change the conversation a bit, so that people like yourself don't get grilled.
Yeah.
Don't get grilled. Like, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm perfectly comfortable with people's choices around me. It's just my, you know, my decision for the day, your decision for the day. But it's fun to have an alternative to still have that kind of special thing as part of being in the group, or a celebration, or kind of those traditional things that we often associate alcohol with as well. Yeah. And again, nothing wrong, no shaming, just
No, if I feel like people are not
choices.
drinking because of me, it makes me more uncomfortable. Like, I don't mind being around people when they're drinking. It's like, the only thing that's important to me is that I have the option to leave when I want. But like otherwise, like no problem with it at all. Because honestly, when people are drinking, like my anxiety gets a little better because I know that they're not worried about what I'm doing at all. And so like I can just relax and be myself. And so I just like everybody should just do what they want to do, but nobody should feel pressured to drink. Like, do I think that as a society and this culture has relied too heavily on drinking for a little while? Probably. Like it wouldn't be a bad thing for everybody to maybe like moderate a little. There's a lot of stuff that comes with alcohol. Like, yes, you feel fuzzy and your inhibitions are lowered and it can be fun, but also there's violence and there's all kinds of health issues. So like if we all stepped back a little, it would be good, but I'm certainly not on a crusade to have a sober world. Yeah.
Yeah. More empowering those who want to try something different and make a change, then there's some options for those people to make it fun as well.
Yeah, and when the mocktail's good enough, like everybody wants to try it anyways, the drinkers and non-drinkers, everybody's like,
yeah, give me a
slurping on your drink. Like it's a miracle I've not caught COVID yet. This is movie in front of thousands and thousands of people. Yeah. Everybody's like, trying my drinks.
Yes. And they are yummy. I can attest to that. So I love them. One of the things that is kind of fascinating, which I mentioned earlier, is following what interests you to create a business. Like you said, you didn't set out to do this. So as you kind of started to get creative and kind of fill that time and space and use your hands because you're, that creative type, tell me how it evolved into the business that it is today.
Yeah, I think you're right. It just came from like following the breadcrumb trail of treats that are delicious to you. It's a strange analogy, but you're just like, that's good, that's good, that's good. And all of a sudden, like I said, the reaction on social media was good. And then all of a sudden I had all these beautiful images and recipes to work with. So I threw them into a book. And my partner has worked in media for a while, and he's a journalist, and he just sort of put out a little press release, and the reception was great, and we got like the feature on the lifestyle section on the front page there on the journal, and that was super cool. That was like 3 years ago almost. And then like Edify reached out and did a little interview, and then Adrienne Pan from CBC reached out, and she offered me a column, and that's when we were like, okay, this is interesting, because he was like, I've been a journalist for a while, like CBC just doesn't reach out and offer you a column. But it was, and then we realized like, okay, like there's nobody else taking up space here in like a sort of meaningful way. And that's when I'd been feeling kind of stuck in my career. I think you get to a point as a creative person when you have given your heart and soul and all your ideas to other people to grow their companies, and you just kind of are over that, and you don't have to be creative. I think maybe everybody hits that point. And then you're ready for something different. Not everybody's cut out for entrepreneurship, for sure. That's its own wild ride. But I kind of am. It's in my blood. I come by it honestly. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. And so we just kind of leaned in. And that's when I connected with Token Bitters, with Keenan Pascal, and made him a mocktail. Then he approached me about doing a bottled line, which is when we did the Distemperance mocktails. Those are super cool. We've been producing those for over 2 years now. They all are focused on Alberta agriculture first. So we have 2 Hascat flavors, 2 Saskatoon. And, it's now that's kind of running on its own. Like manufacturing was interesting, but it also terrifies me. There's just so much to be responsible for. So I'm going to leave that to the experts and like help with recipe development, but not have to run a factory. And now what I'm really interested in, and you were at a class, was sort of the teaching, and how can I help share this information now? And we're catering, because nobody's really doing that in a way that's super thoughtful. So it just evolved, and I think it's been so exciting every step of the way, because I have just been pursuing what is interesting to me. Or even when I like the venture into manufacturing, I like, I think you start to realize when you're losing that breadcrumb trail, where it was like, I feel tired and stressed all the time. Like, and I feel like I can't talk about any mocktails that aren't these four that we've sold in bottles, that we're selling in bottles. And I think sort of having to double back and be like, okay, how do I find the trail again? I feel like I'm sort of losing hold of what's interesting about this to me. So I don't think it's just a thing that happens once, that we go down a path because it interests us and we're like set for life. Just you'll never be bored again. Just go and I think it's that you have to continue to choose that path over and over and over again, which involves having like a tolerance for risk, because my parents definitely both were like, this is really beautiful, sweetheart, but how, I don't know how you're gonna like monetize this. And
Right.
like, they just didn't know what was happening. Nobody really did at the time, but it happened, right? And I'm lucky. Not everybody, like I came in on an upswing in of economic movement. Not everybody gets to have that.
Mhm.
Like maybe your passion is pottery. There's a lot of potters out there, So I think it just also comes down to like, does everything have to turn into a capital C career? Or like, what are you hoping to get out of it?
Mhm. It's a good place to start to, no matter what, do what you love. Whether
Yes.
it turns into a business or not, if it grounds you and it's interesting and it, allows your creative side or your, technological side or whatever it is that you are kind of your foundation of who you are,
Yeah.
allows you to tap into that and feel more you, it's
Yes.
right. There is value in it.
And also knowing when you're straying from it. What are the signs?
Yes.
Like I think when we're used to living in a stressed out place, it's hard to know what they are. You lose sight of them.
Mhm.
And like does it manifest in that you start being more short with your loved ones, or your house becomes messy to a point that, you don't want to be in it anymore? Like I think that yeah, like knowing your tells will help keep you on a sort of path. And I know for myself, I've just gone through a period of rest where I'm kind of coming out of it now, but like those last few years have really burnt me out. It's almost been too much opportunity and I've said yes to everything.
Mhm.
But I think you also need to know when to stop and recharge so that you can go forwards towards what does interest you. Like I took a month and a half to just kind of chill, and all of a sudden, like I'm just coming up with recipes like crazy. Whereas coming up with a single recipe before just seemed like, oh, I don't know what we want. That's not how
It's
it
so
started.
hard. Just passion
Right?
of mine.
Oh, like you don't ever want to be doing that over the thing that you're supposed to be passionate about. So like when that's happening, like stop,
Yes.
adjust,
Yes.
adjust course. Yeah.
Yeah. I so agree with you around the taking a break. And not everybody has the opportunity to take a month and a half and sit back, but even just taking an hour on a weekend or 15 minutes a day or whatever it is. And if you can take that chunk, fabulous, if that's what you feel you need. But sometimes it's just creating that little bit of space to let it go and actually hear yourself. Because what I have found, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is sometimes building a business, people have a lot of ideas on how you should do it. And in my case, I hire a lot of people to help me. And sometimes I've kind of gotten a little off track. So like, you should do it this way. And the whole time I'm like, do I want to do it that way? And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And inevitably, when I do that, it doesn't work out. And I don't always do things the way it's recommended or always traditional. And so sometimes it takes me some time to get back to that truth within what is right for me. And I'd love to know if you've had a similar experience, and like if so, where have you ever been tripped up like that?
Oh yeah, like the people pleaser in me. And I think that can be harder as women for sure. we're like just bred with appeasement, I don't know if that's
We want to help and we want to serve, and yeah.
yes, to sort of adjust ourselves around other people as opposed to being the thing that takes up the space and let other people adjust themselves to us.
Yes.
And so I mean, we've sort of like been dabbling in this world of commercial real estate, playing with the idea of a brick and mortar for a while, and that's a big scary world, and that's a world I don't know a lot about. And so my tendency through that process has been to defer to the men. And like, this isn't always a thing with men, but like in this instance, I've sort of ignored my instincts, and sort of let things get to a point where you stop and realize, like, oh my God, this is crazy. What are we doing? I don't want this. And I've had to like muster up all of my courage and jump in and say, hey, I don't think this is right, and work through all of those feelings of feeling like a nuisance or a nag or a hysterical woman, or like you're or an indecisive leader. And so I've definitely found that to be challenging. And then I also as I'm trying to conceptualize something, I have to be careful about who I ask for their opinion, because if they give it to me and it's not what I want to do, it's I mean, sometimes that can be helpful, like when you're trying to make a decision and you flip a coin and you realize that it's not what you wanted and you're like, no. So it comes up heads, and heads is like you have a ick feeling about it. So sometimes asking people and they tell you what they think and you're like, no, that's not what I want, is good, but you have to be feeling confident, right? I think if you ask people that whose opinion might shake your sort of foundation in what you want, you have to watch out for that. But also be open to feedback. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I do is I have what I call my cabinet. And those are my go-to people who I trust, I respect, I know have my best interests at heart, who know me well, but will call me on my bullshit. So I've got those people in my life that I can ask for guidance and advice, because I trust them and I know they're doing it to help me, not to make themselves feel better or for whatever reason they have. And even then, sometimes I have to go, okay, does that fully resonate? Like, I'm going to take that in and see if it resonates. Because sometimes I'll get a little wall, and I'm like, is that a resistance because I'm scared of it? Is it a resistance because I really don't want it? Is it resistance because of how it was delivered? Like, is it my own little thing inside that didn't like how that was said? So I find, for me, taking that information and then sitting with it, I can better know where my next step is and which side of the coin I want. But sometimes I choose one side and it's just not quite right. And you have to go through it to know for sure. Like, it feels like the right decision in the moment, and it is the right decision in the moment. But then sometimes you just have to zag and go, either it's not working, or it's not really resonating, or it's not coming together. And again, there's that fine balance between it's not coming together and, you know what, it's just one of the bumps in the road, and it's not coming together and it's like truly doesn't feel right. So that's been my experience anyway. And it's a bit long-winded, but
I understand. It's like, and that's the thing I've been going through recently, is because a lot of this is new to me, especially I have that imposter syndrome when it comes to anything to do with business. I did not study business. I don't see myself as a particularly responsible person. I've never owned a home. I've paid cash for all my cars, or like just taken my parents' old cars. I've moved around a lot. I'm not somebody who's lived like a particularly stable life. So that leads me to sort of doubt myself a little bit in these instances as well, when it comes down to business jargon and business talk. And sort of have to check in and be like, okay, am I just afraid, or is my instinct trying to tell me something? And that's a really tricky thing to navigate. And I'm starting to get a little bit better at it. And I think it comes from like, you have to get that imposter syndrome out of there. It is not serving you. And if somebody uses a word in a meeting that you don't understand, you ask them, because I think jargon can be a weapon. And so I've started to learn to just like, just like
Keep going. Yeah. I
yeah,
love it.
cut the BS, like, what are you saying? What does that mean? Wait, you said something earlier. I don't know what that means. So is what you're saying that we are actually going to be, like, and you'll see other people in the room kind of like lean in because they also didn't know what that meant. So I'm getting better at that, but I know what you mean about the fear and the like, is this just me getting cold feet, or is this me saying, hey, stop, you're about to make a mistake?
Yeah, exactly. The reason I went, woo, you couldn't hear if you're on the podcast, you won't necessarily know that I just did that. But as you were saying that, one of the things I love that you said was, I don't have a business degree. Honestly, I don't care. Like I don't have a business degree either, but I'll tell you what, I've done okay.
Yeah.
And because I learned as I went, I was fortunate like you. I grew up in business. I somehow by osmosis I did get a lot of lessons. But stepping into it on my own, completely different story to being in the family business and helping in the family business.
Yeah.
So, and then kind of back to what we're talking about, like separating what I wanted versus what I heard my dad's voice in my head. Because I am so different the way I run my business to how my dad did. And that was really hard to like whittle that out. But in the end, he was like, oh, you did things I never felt I could do. Like he couldn't let go of things.
Yes.
Like I'm very good at delegating and having people do what I'm not interested in doing or not as good at as other people. But anyhow, kind of back to what I was saying around needing a business degree. I want to emphatically say you do not need a business degree to start, run, grow, be successful, and have a business. And in a way, I think sometimes, well, A, thinking we need one stops us.
Yeah.
But B, just because you have a business degree does not mean you can run a business. And it's a very different beast being in it versus being around it. And I also love, because I think a lot of people get intimidated by the language and the jargon. And quite honestly, it's just acronyms. And it can be thrown around as sometimes it's just a quick way to say something, but sometimes it can be intimidating. And I love, love, love that you just ask questions.
Yeah.
And you're right. A lot of people at the table don't know what that meant either, but they're rolling with it and hoping they'll figure it out.
And I've realized we've been on the verge of making some crazy decisions.
Yeah.
Because there's just some like misunderstandings about terminology. So you really need to not be afraid. And I think one thing I've also learned is that I need to trust yourself. Sort of been a journey. I saw somebody say somewhere that like anxiety is the opposite of trusting yourself, and I think that's really interesting. But what I have to remember is that like I was always a top student. I'm usually really good at most things that I try. Being bad at things is something for me to work on, and that's okay. But like usually my school project was, excellent, was in the realm of excellent. And because I care and because I take tremendous pleasure out of doing a good job about things that I care about. And like, why would a business be any different? And when I think about like, again, if we talk about deferring to men, and this is nothing against men at all, it's just a thing that women have to sort of contend with.
Absolutely.
When I think about some of the projects that the guys would do when I was in, communication school, and they would just be like, wah, wah. And then like, if I think that I'm treating my business and this, the same way, and I'm letting these other people make the decisions, like, no, I tend to have really good judgment. I tend to try really hard and do my due diligence. And I think if you can, take the business degree and the jargon out of it and just be like, hey, do I tend to excel do I tend to give everything that I have? Well, then, yeah, let's give it, let's make a go of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trusting ourselves is imperative. And it's just my easiest way to say it. Not always easy, but imperative. And I think also, again, getting advice when you ask for it, I think that's a key thing for me too. I don't want people just throwing stuff at me and I'll just kind of say, no, thank you. But not letting those little voices get in our head. You talk about Gollum in the book, right? And I love Gollum. It's my favorite character, but
Yeah.
it's a really nice way to say it in a different way that makes us think differently compared to like, some of the other analogies we have for that voice that's in there and questioning but then trusting not the Gollum voice that's, the culmination of your own kind of self-worth and ideas and imposter syndrome and, confidence and whatever it is that it is for you. Um, quieting that voice and then listening to the true you, right? Like how do I pull that in, quiet the other voice? Gollum's going to come back out, always does. That's just life. But quiet and then listen to yourself in the essence of who you are and what you need. No matter what business, no matter if you're working in a business, no matter if you're a parent, no matter if you're training your dog, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like in the book I talk about, acts of like self-care versus soothing. And that like self-soothing is things that you can do that are like fish that you can throw to the golem, because I think we also can care for the golem. Like we can do things to help quiet that voice. Like I spent a long time being insecure about the fact that I knew that I was insecure. So
Fascinating. Yeah.
shaming that voice and being like, go away, I shouldn't be thinking these thoughts isn't helpful either. It's just kind of like being like, oh, sweetie, what do you need? Like, why are you here? Okay. Like, do you need a snack? You still have to do this thing that scares you and that you don't want to do, but how about this? So like, we'll put ourselves in the bath later and we can have a piece of cake. Like, what can we do to help like care for that little critical, frightened voice, I think, so that we can also, it lets us do these things.
Yes. Having compassion for it and kind of stepping away from it being who you are rather than something that's being thought or something that needs a bit of attention and nurturing and soothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, instead of seeing it as a thing that's out of control and that's driving your narrative and is who you are, it's just like,
yeah,
needs to be nurtured a little. And then I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that in her book, Big Magic.
Yeah.
About just like fear is always going to be there and it's always going to come along on every road trip, but you have to tell it to sit in the back seat. It is absolutely not allowed to drive, and you can just like licorice at it.
Kids under the popcorn. M&Ms. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's right. Like, who's driving the bus? Right? Or who's driving the car?
Yeah.
It's okay that it's there as long as it's not sitting in the driver's seat as the primary driver of your life and of your decisions. So yes, feed it snacks when it needs it.
Like single mom trick.
Watch this movie. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There was no movies in cars. It was like
true. Yeah.
Over here.
No, we did not have that. Oh my gosh. Tell me what's next? Tell me a little bit about the next venture you're on and where this has evolved into as you follow the breadcrumbs and follow those things that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I sort of, not in a place to make an announcement quite yet, but sort of hinting at a more permanent location.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been like a journey
Yeah.
to figure out, and a super exciting one as well. So that's part of why I've sort of stepped back from manufacturing and giving myself some space to figure out what's next. So there's that. There's stepping into the catering more. Honestly, I'm just at this like really juicy place right now where I've just let the creativity come for a minute. So whether that's the beginnings of another book, or well, it's probably will be that is just I've been letting myself like draw. I've been incorporating my mocktail work into and I'm not on the computer like I did with the coloring book. I'm drawing with my hands. And I'm drawing in every style that I can, get my eyeballs on. And I just went and bought myself oil pastels and watercolors and Conte and crayons and pencil crayons and like anything I want. It's just like I've given myself a couple hours a day to play, and I'm finding that that's really unblocking some things. So I don't know where that's going to go. But again, right? It's the like trusting that leaning into the joy of it and the like about why you got into whatever business you're in or what, in the first place. And all of a sudden, like I'm meeting all these interesting people, such as yourself, and opportunities just coming up because I'm not over here like with Gollum just being like afraid.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm just like, there's enough going on financially to like keep me afloat.
Yeah.
Certainly not no tidal wave of money coming in at the moment, but enough where I can just be like, all right, like it's gonna be fine. So I'm in a juicy moment and it's great. And I think if things go in a kind of cycle for me, it's like you take these moments to create and then something comes from it. And that tends to be like a gauntlet of a lot of hard work. And then there tends to be a lot of fun reward at the end of that, where you get to go promote a thing that you made, or the company gets more recognition or what have you. So I think I've just come through a very big cycle of that, and with the manufactured stuff, and I'm sort of at the beginning now of something new, and that's leaning back into being creative with the mocktails and with the flavors and all of my drawing and being creative right now is I'm focusing on one ingredient at a time. Drawing it and I'm playing with it and I'm sniffing it and tasting it. And I just spent a month with wasabi and came up with like a bunch of new recipes, which is great, but like I'm so tired of wasabi.
No sushi, no.
Yesterday I made myself a wasabi chocolate coconut egg cream, which was delicious. But like I had a sip and I was like, that's good. I don't want any more.
I'll save that for one of my classes now.
That's it. I'll save it for classes.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I'm doing, and it's been like a joy. And I just trusting that, everything will sort itself out. And like increasingly it is incumbent upon me to have like to be able to think of menus really quickly.
Yeah.
It's like classes or catering. So the more I do this now when I have space, the more future me will be like, thanks. I didn't have time to think
doing all that creative work. Yeah.
Happy chocolate. What were you doing back then, girl?
Yeah. Holy.
So that's what I'm up to, and it's been great.
I love it. And you had shared previously when you did your book, I was going to try and get it in the frame, Dry Spell, that you were up early every morning. Like you were so excited about it and you had the creative juices flowing and can you share a bit more about how this book came to fruition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't even know how it started. I think somebody gave me their old tablet and I was just messing around with it and I started tracing and I started I think I wanted to make some gear for mock-ups, like I've always wanted to make a t-shirt that says mocks before cocks. Try mock. Well, I was like messing around and I was trying to draw my own artwork because I just didn't have enough money to pay my friends who are more talented than me to do it. And I drew a drink And I was like, oh, that was kind of fun. And then I drew another one and another one. And then the way my brain works is like, make an entire book, do it.
God.
Yeah. Like when I'm interested in something, there's no stopping me. I am a freight train.
Yeah.
So I just started like upset, like I got all hunched up. I got weird knots. My arm got messed up from drawing so much. Um, and like I still had a day job. And so I found that like, because the last 2 years were the busiest 2 years of my life, and that's when I made this book. And so really the only time where it didn't feel like the world was like beating down my door trying to get things was like before 8:30 in the morning. So I would get up at like 6, sometimes 5:30, and just draw. And I didn't need an alarm. I was like excited to hop out of bed and do it because it was like this was for me. And I think in that feeling burnt out and feeling like I was, wearing myself too thin and kind of spreading my joy out like on dry toast, trying to do you know what I mean? Like you're trying to butter all the corners for everybody, but you can't. You're
Yeah.
just scraped out.
Yeah.
But this was like something that was only for me, and I wasn't even necessarily planning on publishing it. But then it just kept going and coming together, and it took so long. Like all of that is hand drawn. This is like before AI. Of course, it comes out right when AI is popular, so I'm sure people thought I used it. But it just kind of kept me going. It was this way to power up my batteries every single day. And then when the drawing was done, I was like, crap, I have to write this now. And the writing took almost as long as the drawing. So it really was a wonderful habit that I got into without even meaning to. And I've missed it. I would get up after the book was published and like sit in a chair and scroll on my phone. And all of a sudden it's like 9 a.m. and you've been sitting there for 2 hours doing nothing and feeling jumbled and scrambled and feeling guilty to start the day. So I've now with this new project, I've started that morning routine again. And not everybody has time for this, but I think if you are a morning person, if you aren't, respect. The world is unfairly skewed towards morning people. I get it. But like, yeah, like
I'm a night owl.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I'm a
Yeah.
night owl. I
Yeah.
get creative at night, which is fabulous, except then I'm like, oh goodness, I
Yeah.
should really get to bed because the world does often revolve around mornings. I'm fortunate that not all my mornings revolve around first thing in the morning, but yeah. Anyhow, carry on.
Like,
The
yeah,
night
if you're
owls,
creative,
I respect you. The morning people, I respect you. But
but if you're a night
oh, night owls.
find a way to take that juicy time at night, like when kids are in bed or what have you, and it just like it's so important. I think again, reconnecting to the joy of the thing. This whole process of sobriety has really taught me that I haven't known what makes me happy that well, and I've had to learn it, and I've had to really dig into those things because I really used to look forward to happy hour and when that was gone, yeah, you have to find other things. And now I really look forward to that solo creative time when nobody's asking me for anything. I really look forward to fresh pajamas. I really look forward to dinner. I love to eat. I'll ask my partner for a foot rub, and if he says yes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just so excited for that.
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah, find those things that light you up and then like give them to yourself by all means. Like do not be stingy. Give them to yourself all the time as much as you can.
Yeah. And it makes the rest of life so much more rich and also more joyful and more motivated and more grounded and like all those things that just help bring you to the world, which is the gift really of each of us.
But also just like bribe yourself.
What are your bribes?
Oh, right. Like sweet treats. I've absolutely since quitting drinking become a sweets person. So I'll do the thing that I have to do, and then I'll let myself walk down to Duchess and
Yes.
have fun and take something home for dessert. So that's a big one for me. Definitely baths. like, oh, there's nothing more luxurious and decadent than like an afternoon bath, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are yours?
Oh, funny. I'm not a bath person, but I
Oh,
understand the appeal, but I just can't sit still that way. I sit still in other ways. I'm kind of busy like you, like just like to be doing things and engaged. Um, well, in terms of food, it's chocolate, hands down. That's my treat. And I love to read. I was just talking with someone the other day, kind of what you're alluding to. And we're talking about this book that we're both reading. She's like, I just can't wait to get to my book at night. And
yeah.
that's her downtime. She gets up quite early. She has a big family. But that is her peace and quiet. And I would agree that's mine. I have an area called my Zen Den. And so it's where I do my meditations, it's where I do my reading and my journaling and that type of thing is where I get grounded and I love it. I wouldn't call this so much a treat, but one of my passions is horse riding. And since I've gone back to horse riding, changed my life. And I took 2 decades off, and I can't believe I did because it is so in me and who I am that, yeah, I just can't believe I didn't. So those are the things that ground me and that are my treats, but also really that create the life that I want. And
Yeah. It's like other things opening up once you got back into.
absolutely, yeah. And it's funny, the way I got back into horses, I couldn't justify it. This just tells you how much I can't help myself but do business. I couldn't justify it for myself, but I was able to justify it buying the horse in my business and making it a business. But it's one of those things you don't always get what you want, you get what you need. And so I really actually he has been the one of the biggest blessings for me. Because I got him right before the pandemic, no idea what was going to happen with the world. And he has helped carry me through. And like the bond is incredible. And okay, he's still so-called a business asset. He is, right? He does bring value in different ways, but on the personal level, I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Yeah.
So it's
It's
interesting, like you said, you're like, I was ready. I wasn't ready for a long time to step back into it. Um, and my big idea was to ride 1 day a week on Fridays, not my own horse, not do lessons, not compete, not jump again. Well, I rode 2 horses that day and I jumped.
that's amazing.
And then a couple years later, I'm like, no, I do want my own horse. And I never thought I would own a horse again. And I never thought I'd step into the show ring again. And it's the best thing, but it started with very similar to you. Like, I'm just going to do this once a day. And you're like, I'm going to play with making some, I don't know, some drinks, some mocktails.
Yeah.
And it
It's
turned into something much bigger and better and more amazing than I could have ever thought.
the universe is always knocking.
Absolutely.
Or, it's just like, when do you feel like answering? Sometimes you're in your pajamas and you're just like, no,
Yeah,
no, I
not today.
don't want to see anybody, including you, universe. Sorry, go away.
Yeah,
But, but that's
exactly.
okay too. Like, I think that, like I definitely am somebody who feels like they have too many ideas sometimes, and that can be um not an enjoyable experience either when you just feel like "Ah!"
What do I do? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's okay to not be ready for the universe to kick your door open.
Mm.
Um, but it's always knocking, always. And there's
Yeah.
always some thread to pull on that that if you are a curious enough person, it will lead you somewhere fascinating. But I also know what you mean about trying to turn everything into a business. Like I feel like anybody who talks to me about their life and I want to tell them how they can monetize it. And I'm like, no. Oh, you did great at that. You could offer that as a service. Like, no.
Not yet. Yeah. Yeah,
For
exactly.
everybody too. I think allowing myself to have hobbies that I don't turn into work is something that I definitely struggle with, but that comes with passion, right? Like I could tie anything back to mocktails. It's yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then you carry on with that too. It's
Sure that you could tie anything back to like have relationships with horses. Like there's yeah, when you sort of see anything through that lens and it gives you a whole new sort of perspective on the wisdoms of the world. But
yes.
animals are a big reward for me.
Yes. You have a
Like
dog, right?
yeah, sniffing his like disgusting, smelly face.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, just like I just love it.
Yeah, I love it too. My dog just got up and walked away when we started talking about it. That's hilarious.
Yeah, he's
But
not a dog that other people think smells good by any stretch. Like
right.
he's one of those like little floopy, often groomed. He's like a stinky lab that we rarely bathe. But I just like, love it. And that grounds me more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. It can be
Yeah.
anything. Yeah. Anything that brings you joy. And it all flows when you allow it to flow. We all resist sometimes. We all have doors that get knocked on many times before we open them. And I think it's listening to which ones keep coming back and which door keeps getting knocked and which thing keeps coming back to that grounds us and brings us joy, and do more of that. See where it takes you.
You know when you're on the right path, when all of a sudden like everything is connected and
Mm.
realize that everything in your life was taking you to this moment. And all of those hobbies and interests and things that you dabbled in that seemed random at the time aren't. And like my interest in foraging, my interest in kombucha making, all of those things that like maybe seemed a little disjointed or all coming together into this one pursuit that is incredibly niche. And not everybody's making mocktails the way that I am, which is from a culinary perspective and a sort of botanical one as well. And that's because it's a convergence of my interests in my life and who I am. And I think when you start to see that happening and the dots connecting, like you're onto something. So just like it's important to pay attention to how things come together. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, the uniqueness of you bringing that to the world in any way that feels right
Yeah.
is the magic.
Yeah. If you just lean into your own weird self and your own weird interests, like the world will be interested.
Yes, exactly.
We're all
Very
so weird and we're all so interesting, but you gotta look at it.
yes. Make it interesting for ourselves, and then it might entertain others too.
Make stuff that you want to consume,
Yeah, yeah.
content that you want to consume. And I think as having a background in marketing, I spent a lot of time making content that like if I never make another brochure for somebody's, like lawn mower repair company, like I'm fine with that. They can be passionate about lawn mower repair. I am not. So I typically only make creative content for things that interest me or for people that I love. And
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh. This has been so fun. Um, I'm gonna end with a quote, another quote from your website. But before I do that, I want to just again talk about this book, Dry Spell. It is hilarious. Here's just an example of the images. I don't know if you can see how dirty it is, but I think that's a good sign, right? My version of coloring is like dirt all over it. And it has like a lot of really great, just kind of fun but insightful and life lessons. But on top of it, really great breakdown of how to make mocktails, like create your own and have some fun with it and do what works for you. That
yeah,
someone else will come up with something different than you do or something that I do. So I encourage everybody to go buy it. Please share your website because that's I know where you can get this and any other contact info. Like if people want to have you for an event or anything, I'd like to give them the opportunity.
absolutely. Yeah. It's Mock-Ups Mocktails.ca for the website or Instagram. And then our catering company is called Spilt. So if you just look up Spilt Bar on Insta or spilt.ca, and you'll find us in either of those two places. But yeah, thinking about it, that coloring book is such a great example of like a convergence of all one's weird little interests together. Like, what a niche product I made there. Absolutely. Thank you.
Like I said, it's so fun. I was giggling reading it as I was waiting for my appointment. I'm like, and I had my highlighter and I'm like, oh, I got to go back and read that again. That's hilarious, right? Maybe we'll do another one and I'll read excerpts from here. We'll do another visit and chat and interview. But thank you so much for joining. I'm going to read this and because I think it's a really good way to end and just remind people what they can do. So in a culture obsessed with alcohol, choosing not to drink is about as counterculture and punk rock as it gets. So go ahead, be a badass. And I just say, be a badass in whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
And whatever interests you, and have fun and enjoy life.
Great advice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and sharing and being open to sharing your story. I hope it inspires some people, and I look forward to seeing you again.
So much for having me. This has been lovely. I can't believe it's been an hour. So.
I know it flies by, right? All right. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining this episode of Empowerment TV and the Empowerment Podcast. Come on over to dawnpayne.com, sign up for email updates. I have free training in there as well. You'll be the first to know of new things that come out, new information, new little tidbits and gifts. So head over there, dawnpayne.com. And in the meantime, keep believing in yourself and keep believing in your dreams. You have everything it takes to make them all happen. I'll see you next time.